Okay, it's been a while. Let's do a cEDH deck tech. Advantage Thrasios is possibly one of the more interesting cEDH decks right now. The deck was originally created by Cobblepot and is best described as a control deck, similar to 4-color Rashmi. However, while that deck gained its advantage by attaching Curiosity effects to Vial Smasher, this deck gained its card advantage by activating Thrasios as many times as humanly possible. We use this by packing cards that reduce the cost of Thrasios' ability into a Sans Black control shell. Now, without further ado, let's get on with the deck tech. Let's start off by discussing the commanders of the deck. Thrasios is the most obvious choice as the deck is basically entirely built around him, but I want to talk about his partner. Given that we're basing the entire deck around Thrasios, we have to decide who his partner should be. We have three options here. We want a 4-color deck so we can maximize the amount of cards in our card pool, so we have to pair Thrasios up with either Vial Smasher, Tymna, or Bruce Tarl/Akiri. We go with a Boros partner for one main reason. Thrasios is basically the only commander in the deck, with the deck being based entirely around him and his ability. To utilize Thrasios to his fullest potential, we need to reduce the cost of his ability so we can use it multiple times per turn. Enter the Thrasios engines. Regardless of any partner we could run with, we get to run Training Grounds, Benthic Biomancer, and Seedborn Muse. Well, yes, Seedborn Muse doesn't reduce the cost of Thrasios' ability. If we have 8 mana, we get to use Thrasios' ability up to 8 times per turn cycle, and we can also leave up mana for literally any other cards we want to play. Now, we're running Boros because if we have Boros in our commander's color identity, we get access to one more Thrasios engine, Zerda the Dawnwaker. You may be wondering, is it actually worth ditching black, the best tutor color in the game, just for one more Thrasios engine? Yes it is. Let me explain. This deck is based pretty much entirely around Thrasios. Therefore, we need to have as many pieces that synergize with him as possible. By adding the 4th engine in, we increase our odds of drawing one in our opening hand from 22% to 29%. So in short, yes, it is worth it to ditch black if we can get an additional Thrasios engine. Now, why Bruce Tarl over Akiri? Well, to quote Cobblepot, life total. The more games I've played, the more aggressively I've found myself using Sylvan Library and Painlands for value. Bruce not only yields consistent return of 3 to 6 life per orbit, but also applies significant pressure on our opponents, ad nauseam or otherwise, when the game becomes a grind. Now that we've discussed the commander, let's discuss the... Given that we can draw our entire deck via Thrasios' ability, pretty much all we have to do is make infinite mana in any combination of colors or colorless, and we can win the game off that. We have 2 main ways of doing this. The first one is using Dockside Extortionist plus Emil the Blessed. As long as our opponents have 4 or more artifacts and enchantments, we can infinitely flicker the Extortionist, netting infinite treasures and hence infinite mana. Dockside is also obviously a very powerful ramp piece. Our other combo is Kinnan Bonder Prodigy plus Basalt Monolith. If we have both out, we tap the Monolith to get 4 colorless mana. We then use 3 of the mana to untap the Monolith. We do that until we get infinite colorless mana and then draw our deck with Thrasios. Now, once you have your entire hand in your deck, we have a couple of options of how to win. All of our win conditions in this deck involve Twister looping. Now, this concept is fairly complex and I'll explain it further in a video, but for now, I'll just give you a brief rundown. You start off by casting Time Twister, shuffling your hand into your library and drawing 7. After that, you activate Thrasios until you find Noxious Revival. You then cast that targeting Time Twister, which you can then redraw off of Thrasios' ability. From here, you can cast any spell you want and counter it with Swan Song, getting you a 2/2 Swan. You then cast and loop Time Twister and Noxious Revival, countering any spell and getting infinite 2/2 Swans. You then cast Finale of Devastation for at least 10, giving all of the Swans haste, and then you can swing at your opponents for lethal. If that doesn't work, like if your Swan Song gets exiled or something like that, we can just Twister loop Cyclonic Rift instead of Swan Song, bouncing away all of our opponent's non-land permanents, and then putting them back into their library via Time Twister. We can then lock them out of the game by countering every spell they play and then beating them to death with Bruce Tarl. Ramp is one of the most crucial parts of any cEDH deck, and trust me, this deck is missing none of it. We pretty much have all the staple dorks that we can fit in, as well as pretty much every playable rock. We have Mox Amber as well, because Thrasios should pretty much always be on the battlefield. We have the 2 land enchantments, as well as the Smothering Tithe and Carpet of Flowers. The one oddity in this ramp package is Springleaf Drum. About the drum, Cobblepot says, Springleaf Drum is essentially a Mox that costs 1 as long as you have a creature in play. There are plenty of times where we got creatures in play that don't normally attack, or, more commonly, have summoning sickness. Having an extra rock at such a reasonable rate is hard to resist when we want as much mana fluidity as we can get in a value-oriented list. That statement is especially true when Thrasios is pretty much just an enchantment anyways, and he'll basically always be up as free fodder for the drum. Despite not being in black, we actually have some pretty solid tutors in the deck. Neoform, Finale of Devastation, Yisan the Wanderer Bard, and Eldritch Evolution are all pretty good library to battlefield tutors, especially because 3 out of the 4 combo cards we have are creatures. Transmute Artifact lets us exchange something like a Springleaf Drum for a Basalt Monolith to win the game off of. Mystical and Enlightened Tutor are both great tutors that let us find pretty much anything we could need at instant speed, and Gamble's a pretty decent tutor given that we aren't in black. With every good combo deck, we need some way to protect our combo. Vexing Sorcerer, Grand Abolisher, and Allosaurus Shepherd all function as good proactive protection pieces. Veil of Summer and Sylvan Safekeeper are the good reactive pieces. Silence is great at either protecting your combo or using it on an opponent's combo turn to ensure that they can't get the win off. Given that the whole objective of the deck is to get as much card advantage through a commander as possible, we only need to run the best of the best when it comes to card advantage spells, so we can skip all the mediocrity. The only card draw spells we're running are Sylvan Library, Mystic Remora, Gitaxian Probe, Brainstorm, and of course, Time Twister. Because we don't have to run that much card advantage, that makes room for a ton of interactive spells. We're running a ton of counter magic, being Swan Song, Pyroblast, Red Elemental Blast, Pact of Negation, Mental Misstep, Flusterstorm, Force of Will, Fierce Guardianship, Dovin's Veto, Deflecting Swat, and Dispel. In addition to the counter magic, we run a ton of single target removal. Swords to Plowshares, Submerge, and Gilded Drake to deal with creatures, Nature's Claim and Force of Vigor to deal with artifacts and enchantments, and Cyclonic Rift to deal with pretty much anything you have to encounter. The last 4 cards in this deck are kinda oddities and ones I didn't really know how to put in any specific category. These 4 cards are Aven Mind Sensor, Dranith Magistrate, Noxious Revival, and Sensei's Divining Top. We run the 2 stacks pieces because there are just amazing one-sided stacks effects, and stacks is technically a form of control, so... We run Noxious Revival so we can Twister Loop, obviously, and because it's a good free recursion spell. Sensei's Top is pretty much just there as a good card in a flex slot. You can replace it with a myriad of options if you want to. The mana base is just your standard cEDH mana base with fetches, duels, pains, and shocks. So that's about it for Advantage Thrasios. Have any questions about the deck or any other decks you want me to tech in the future? Feel free to leave them in the comments below, and hey, leave a like on the video while you're down there. This deck list, as well as Cobblepot's Twitter, and my Twitch, Twitter, and TCG player affiliate links are all in the description below as well. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I hope you have a great day.